listening to Comic Reflections, episode 310. I'm your host, Nicholas Prom.
Oh, and I'm the guy over here, Kurt Lloyd.
Yeah.
I'm on this side of the table.
Kurt.
It's still hot in Portland, so we're still in a noisy room for this
That's true.
episode.
It's true. Kurt and I are joined once again by my good friend, Hub, the host of Tighten Up the Defense, a show you probably already listened to, and if you don't, fix that.
Aw, shucks.
Thanks for coming
Nicholas.
back, Hub, by the way, because I that week in between, I missed you.
Oh, the adventures I
I'll
had.
bet.
There was no week in between. It's the same afternoon.
Shh, come on, you're ruining the magic
You
of
went back to
radio.
Kurt.
I broke kayfabe.
Internet comic book talking radio.
Wait, what were we talking about? I forget.
I don't know. I want to make a joke about Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but then I don't really have a joke.
Oh, boy.
I love Hacksaw. He's like in my top 2 or 3 wrestlers.
Ah,
He's so good.
is he?
Do you
Is
not
he?
like him? I thought your whole look was like in tribute to him.
No, I have mentioned this many times. I am trying to look like a bass player in a Foghat cover band. That's always been my goal.
Wait, are you saying that Hacksaw Jim Duggan doesn't play bass in a Foghat cover band?
That is exactly what I am saying.
Okay.
Everybody knows that it is a Three Dog Night cover band. You son of a bitch.
Look, I love Hacksaw. Sorry.
That's okay. You can. I'm a Tito Santana man. Always have been.
Hey,
Always
Tito
will
Santana's a good wrestler.
be. I know.
Okay.
You want to talk about a comic book?
Let's please. We're going to talk about Brother Power the Geek #2. This was cover dated December of 1968. But according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it went on sale September 5th of 1968. Cover art, once again, by Joe Simon.
By the way, I think if I'm not mistaking my year, that means that this hit the stands 1 week prior to Sesame Street coming on the air.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you think there's any causality there? Or is
Yeah,
that just
sure.
a correlation?
No, absolutely.
Like, do you
Brother
think there
Power
would
would-
have been? He's kind of Muppety looking.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with this.
Although he looks probably more like Animal than any other Muppet. Yeah. That's not a Sesame Street Muppet. But
Where did we
still.
leave, Brother Geek?
We left Brother Geek.
At the bottom of the San Francisco Bay.
Yeah.
Had driven off the Golden Gate
Francisco
Bridge.
Bay. Yeah.
Drove off on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Plummeted to the end, and they all decried his short time on this earth.
Yes, he
Yes.
could have been president, although no, he almost certainly could not have been president.
Yes. But our tale today is called A Visit from the Dead.
I would like to, if we could, just talk about the cover a little bit before
yes,
we get
yes,
into
yes.
that,
Please
because it is striking and it is making, I think, explicit what perhaps had been hinted at in the last issue, which is that Brother Power is very much a Christ figure.
Oh, yeah. Also, this cover was the first image of Brother Power I'd ever seen. I saw it as a tiny black and white thumbnail in one of those comics price guides. And it would be 25 years before I got to read Brother Power. But this was
Saving up that whole time, because this is, of course, one of the most valuable comics ever produced.
I mean, you can get it for like $10, but like,
it doesn't take you 20 years to save that much?
if you're a kid with no allowance like I was, yes. And I was kind of a spendthrift. So, but yeah, like looking at this, I thought it was like a monster book, like a horror comic.
It's both of the covers of these have that kind of feel to them.
Yeah.
And there are parts of the comic book that have that feel too. Like I said, it's a wildly inconsistent tone within the comic book that almost from page to page shifts. But yeah, I can see where you would think that. But on this cover, he is hung up over a wooden, hastily constructed scaffolding that is made for drying fish out on fish hooks. So he is looking like he is crucified, and he is also surrounded by fish. So
Oh, yeah.
pretty Jesus-y.
Even though it was written by a Jew.
So was Jesus.
Oh. So there's a
dropping
connection.
a little knowledge on you there.
No, I know.
This cover's credited to Joe Simon,
Sure
and
am.
the other one too. And I've seen a lot of Joe's work, and it's fantastic. I enjoy it, but the style of this cover and the previous cover are unlike anything I've seen from him. This one looks more like Nick Cardy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Although there's a lot of Joe Simon's work that, especially like his early stuff, he did a lot of like illustrations for newspapers and stuff, and he could work in a lot of different styles. He had an almost Art Deco type stuff that he did with some work that's just really cool looking and striking. And some of his illustrations for newspapers for like the sports sections would be almost photorealistic. So I get where you're saying that, but yeah, he could work in a lot of different styles. I think he's underrated as an artist, which is gonna happen if you work with Jack Kirby and are most noted for that.
Yeah.
It's you're standing next to a giant, you're gonna look a little smaller.
Yeah, but no, Joe Simon's fantastic in his own right, and he lived to a pretty old age. I think he made it to his 90s, and he was still with it pretty well in the end. He lived a full life, and a neat old guy.
And I think a lot of that really can be attributed to the fact that the comic industry didn't take advantage of him in the way that it did a lot of his contemporaries.
Well, yeah, he was in and out of the industry. He was doing other things, and I think that's what saved him probably.
Yeah, that was a big part of it, but also he was quoted as saying that, and so you have to take it. So you do have to take it with a grain of salt because it is him being quoted as saying this, but that he and Will Eisner were the only two people in the comic book industry who knew how to read a contract. So, which from the way he was treated, he handled his business when his characters would go into what would be public domain. He would buy them back in a way that a lot of other artists didn't. So he was very business savvy in a way that I think prevented him from having to be overworked the way a lot of his peers were.
Very smart. I think Bob Kane had the similar acumen to a more sinister degree.
Yeah. Although I'm sure you will hear stories of Joe Simon in that regard too, not in the same way, and certainly isn't vilified in people's recollections the way that Bob Kane is. And in fact, I think both Joe Simon and Will Eisner in their biographies or their autobiographies, I remember them having not necessarily shit-talking Bob Kane, but almost shit-talking by omission, like basically saying things like, I was always told that if you don't have anything nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. So that's the end of the Bob Kane story.
You can say so much by saying so little sometimes.
Indeed.
But yeah, this issue, written again by Joe Simon, he did the pencil layouts. Al Baer ghosted the finished pencils, and then Simon inked them. Let's dig into this crazy, wonderful second and final issue of Brother Power the Geek.
Because the first issue ended with them not knowing if this book would be picked up after this trial issue that they sent out. And so it left him at the bottom of the bay, and kind of an indecisive question as to whether or not he would return. And boom, here he is, first panel, floating out of the bay with the debris, with all the ecological muck in the San Francisco Bay, washing up onto a beach.
Indeed.
And it's funny that we were just talking about Will Eisner, because the title in this is very much like a issue of The Spirit would be.
Absolutely,
like
it's a Spirit splash panel.
The opening splash title is the words "The Geek" have been constructed out of the side of a pier on the river that he is being washed up in. And it is a striking image. And we also see that in this, it is somewhat inconsistent art from the previous issue, because he definitely has a face that has a real nose and eyes on it that are not just painted or sewn on the way they had been previously. That dude definitely has a nose, and he definitely didn't before.
Well, you know, magic's tricky like that.
Yeah, you don't know what's floating around the San Francisco Bay either.
Oh, so you think
It's
he just
the 60s.
found a nose in there?
Probably.
Yeah, fair enough.
Maybe the Zodiac got started early. We just didn't know about it.
So it looks like a hobo and a bunch of kids under a bridge on a beach near San Francisco, drying fish from a rack when Brother Power washes up on shore.
Well,
and
one of them
hooks him.
hooks him, yeah.
Yeah, and Fish's mouth, they think he might be an old mattress at first, and they're not entirely off base in terms of his basic construction. One of the kids, for kids they are mostly, I think even the person who looked like a hobo before is supposed to be one of this band of young urchins. They are a group called the Clinkers, which totally sounds like it is a science fiction racist term for robots.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say anything.
They find him and one of them starts dancing around with him because he's never had a toy of his own. And it's a weird looking scene.
Here's the thing. He says a doll. I'd never had a doll on my own. Look, I'm dancing with my doll. I thought it was taken as like dancing with a girl.
Oh, you are totally right.
And then his friend pulls the gay panic on him like, Marvin, that's a boy doll and it's ugly.
Oh, boy. Good call. Yeah, I had totally misread that. Yeah. But they string Brother Power up as he appears on the cover with some old fish so that they can dry him off and then later take his clothes. Once again, the clothes will dry faster if you remove them first, but thank God they didn't because we don't get to find out if a nose is the only piece of anatomically accurate prosthetics that he picked up in the bay. This scene is overseen by a group that we find out later is called the... What are they called? The...
Oh, God, it's something weird.
Biplane. It's not they have a biplane. They are the Berlin Airplanes.
Yeah.
And they are a very specifically themed gang of toughs.
Well, it reads right here, from a vantage point above, strange military figures in uniforms that shook the world 50 years ago strain to make out the scene.
Like so many young people of the 60s, they found an idol in the Red Baron, and so have decided to emulate every aspect of World War I German air military that they can get their hands on.
Interestingly enough, DC was publishing a series about Baron Richthofen that was serious. Enemy Ace.
I bet they would have loved to get their hands on a couple of issues.
Draughted by Joe Kubert.
What a great book that was, by the way. Those the war tales that they had in the mid to late 60s, well into the 70s.
Yeah.
Weird War,
Sergeant
Unknown
Rock.
Soldier, Sergeant Rock, fabulous
Haunted
books.
Tank.
Yeah.
Love those books.
Haunted Tank, thank you.
Haunted Tank and Sergeant Rock are definitely my faves.
I loved the
The Losers?
I loved the Losers, but it was the men, the one that had Gravedigger in it.
Oh, that is, I think that
Was it Our Men at War?
It was Men of War, I think.
Yeah,
it was
you're
called.
right. Gravedigger was a cool character.
Gravedigger was awesome, and those are split between stories of Gravedigger and I think stories of Enemy Ace.
Oh, okay.
In that book.
That sounds right.
And they're rad. Those are my favorite of the war stories that I've come across.
Outside of EC comics, in like Two-Fisted Tales and stuff, and Frontline Combat, I think that DC Comics' war books are probably the best war comics that have been done. Like Marvel, like they horse around with it with the Howling Commandos, but they're ridiculous. They're just yucking it up all the time. And like
you're tired of those Howling Commandos making fools out of the army.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like so not like a militaristic guy, but I love reading Sergeant Rock and the Combat Happy Joes of Easy Company.
Yeah. Easy Company is such a good name.
Yeah.
Like I think that dichotomy works way better than it does with the Howling Commandos. That's a little on the nose as opposed to like Easy Company being this hard fighting war battled group.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like a real military unit. And the Howling Commandos is like, it's lame like the Boy Commandos.
I don't think the Boy Commandos is lame. I think Boy Commandos is pretty cool. I'd like to see you say that to Brooklyn's face.
I will.
Could you get away with bringing back the way that it was without making changes to the characters and what the story was? Could you bring back the Haunted Tank today?
I think the Haunted Tank kind of is like from a time, it worked in a specific time where we could have the ghost of a Confederate general haunt a tank maybe and give directions to World War II soldiers. I don't think that we could do it now. No.
No, the ghost lobby is too powerful these days. They wouldn't let you get away with that.
But the thing about the Boy Commandos, I just think like kids going and fighting in a war is ridiculous.
And that far off than from what happened.
They do it in Rwanda all the time, but
they did it here too.
Okay.
I mean, it's...
I don't know. I know it's comics. I love like pretty much all of Simon and Kirby's Golden Age stuff except for them.
I'm fine with it being goofy.
And I love goofy stuff. Why am I such a Grinch about the Boy Commandos?
I don't know. The same reason you are about the Howlin' Commandos. You're just a war curmudgeon.
It's weird though, because I'm such,
I agree.
like my attitudes are very like a hippie. That's why I'm like loving this Brother Power comic. But like, yeah, I don't know. I demand my war comics to be deadly serious.
Well, here's a really weird, we're going back to the book, a really weird thing that is not addressed, but it threw me off.
There's one guy dressed as a Roman centurion.
There is one. Okay, that one that got me too. Yeah, one guy has a Roman centurion, and he's part of the Berlin airplanes. But the Berlin airplanes are full-grown adult men, right? And their arch enemies are the clinkers,
who are kids
down fishing out of the bay.
I think maybe it's like a
like the Thing and the Yancey Street Gang.
No, I would possibly, but what I was thinking that it's the Clinkers are probably like a legacy gang. Like these are the offspring of the original Clinkers, and the guys who spent their entire time building a wooden biplane never had the time to go off and get married and really grow up because they spent all their time putting that biplane together, and now they're feuding with the children of their original enemies.
Interesting.
They do have a plank biplane that looks about as rickety and raggedy ass as I've ever seen a vehicle that may or may not be able to fly.
Well, and they're very strict that it is not to be called a glider. It is a biplane, despite the fact that it is a glider and does not have an engine and is made out of wood and ropes.
So anyway, the Berlin airplaners, they all hop on their glider and shove off down a cliff and swing down on the clinkers.
But prior to that, with
their children foes,
the setup was that they had found a spotlight and they shined it down where the clinkers were, and that spotlight somehow generated so much heat that from a distant cliff, it was able to dry out Brother Power
and revive him.
He begins to flex his fingers.
Now, this is from a period that's a little bit before my time, but were gangs really that rigidly defined? Were they that specific in their interests? It reminds me of the Warriors.
I was just going to say, like the baseball Furies.
Totally. Just like having a World War II themed gang doesn't seem that different from that.
I think in the late 80s and the early 90s, there were kind of World War II themed gangs here in Oregon. They
kind of a
different thing.
Yeah.
That's a horrible joke that I made about Metzger and his awful skinhead crew. But yeah, let's never bring that up again.
So yes, the Berlin airplanes take their plank wooden biplane glider and push it off the cliff to head down to where the clinkers are, and they all get on top of this glider.
And amazingly, they don't all die.
When their plan comes to fruition, which is crashing this wooden plane, which presumably I'm going to think they spent the better portion of their life putting together, into the group of orphans that they hate so very much.
But they jump off and they immediately start swinging and beating up these kids.
For like a lot of violence in the hippie comic. A lot of fists and kicks and awfulness.
It's like I said in the last issue, it's the Billy Jackson situation where you get the group of hippies that then encounter the one guy who's really good at fighting, who then they are perfectly happy to do all their fighting for them. Speaking of which, Brother Power is revived somehow by the airplane crash. Perhaps he's just dried out long enough, and he starts beating up the World War I aficionados to the delight of his orphan pals.
I was unaware that Brother Power was wearing jackboots.
Yeah, because the leader of the airliners wanted to. They saw with the spotlight. He's like, "Oh, I want those boots to steal them." It's like, you already have boots.
Yeah, but it is like it's presented as though part of Brother Power's pre-existing character was that, oh yes, of course, he wore World War I era German boots all the time. Everybody knows that. Like, it is an odd point that they decided to go with in this. But yeah, he does appear to be wearing pretty cool motorcycle boots. And we get Brother Power, who, as I mentioned before, is very much more human looking than he was in the previous issue.
Very different. His eyes look human. He almost looks like he has some color in his cheeks that wasn't painted on there.
Yeah, and he started tucking his shirt in.
maybe the magic works like the longer he's alive, the more human-like he becomes.
Could be.
Is there a tipping point where he just becomes like
Just like a
uber
regular
human?
guy?
Like where he goes beyond regular guy.
No, look, he does, because in the Lost third issue, obviously he becomes a real boy and becomes Prez Rickard.
Oh, I think it goes even deeper than that. I think much like in Star Trek Voyager, he evolves beyond that and becomes a super intelligent telepathic salamander and has sex with Catherine Janeway, and they repopulate a planet together. Obviously. I think it's implied.
Did that really happen on Star
For
Trek?
all of you following
Yeah,
along,
it totally did.
Oh my gosh. Janeway was the mother of an entire civilization?
Yeah, that they abandoned immediately and then were like swapping jokes about.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I think that was some first season shit. Did everybody drink because that episode of Voyager comes up so often?
No, just
It's the first I've heard of it.
random weird side references to other geek culture bits that can be thrown into comics. I think that's the start of a drinking game.
Oh, I was.
This is why I had Hub on here. I knew what I was getting into when I brought in a ringer, okay?
I was really hoping you guys just talked about that episode a lot.
You know, I think I bailed on Voyager. Must have been pretty early, because that lizard sex thing, I don't remember that.
Yeah, you're missing out.
Missing out on the lizard sex.
I honestly think that it is from beginning to end the most watchable of the Star Trek series. It's the one that from the first episode, it doesn't necessarily hit the same highs as Next Generation, but it also doesn't start off at the same low point. So anyway, I was just thinking you probably didn't get enough hate mail, so I thought I would just mention that.
I don't know why I would get hate mail for it, but
because I just said that Star Trek Voyager is better than Next Generation.
well, I mean, like that's
And
like,
I'm saying this into the internet.
I don't know. Here's the thing: like, I like the original series best of all, and the other ones are like, okay at best to me.
Now you're getting the hang of this hate mail thing.
It's fine. I don't care. I like the original series and I like the animated series, and like Next Gen's all right, and the other stuff is like ignore for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
To me, it's continually diminishing returns with each spinoff.
Yeah, well, you're missing out on some fantastic lizard sex is all I'll say about that. So anyway, you want to talk about this comic book?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
All
Brother
right.
Power wakes up and begins talking, and the Clinkers can't understand. They can't get their minds around it, but they adapt like almost instantly.
Yeah. Here's the thing. He tells them all about, they don't know anything about him. He tells them all about him, including they called him the Geek, and then insists that they don't call him that. It's like, why would you even say anything? Why would you even bring in that part?
Because that's how exposition works.
Yes, I know. But I mean, I'm Brother Power. Definitely not called the Geek,
So all he knew about humanity prior to all the battles and everything that he had was hippies and the hippie lifestyle.
Yeah.
And he comes out of the bay, and the first thing he does is go look for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is,
He's evolved already.
yeah. He says, I could get a job. I'm doing it.
I love the sign in the supermarket. It says, boy wanted, see manager.
Right.
I don't know if I'd want to see that manager.
Right.
At least wouldn't want to go back. Come on back to my office with me.
Brother Power feels otherwise. We also do get to see that the Clinkers are hanging out in the street corner, and like the hippies, they embrace the zeitgeist of youth culture at the time, which is they just don't want to do shit. They have a different excuse. They say, we're underprivileged kids, man. We got our turf, and that's all we need. When he reprimands them and says, you just want to hang out? You don't want to go get jobs? And they're like, nah, man. So yeah, we got another little bit of, I think, Simon's editorializing about a somewhat paternalistic attitude towards youth culture.
Yeah. But I love that Brother Power says, that's not enough for me. There are jobs to be had, and I don't mind starting at the bottom. Like, he has this, like, really chipper, like, optimistic attitude, like, anything's possible,
Indeed he does, although
You get along great in Reagan's America. By the bootstraps, guys.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. not to put too much of a point on it, but the fact that the words, there are jobs to be had, I don't mind starting at the bottom, is in the same panel as the boy wanted sign, see manager. Just going to leave that out there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He becomes the greatest grocery store clerk of all time.
He sure does.
Packs bags faster than anybody, decides on his own, brilliant, I'm going to strap roller skates on so that I can help old ladies out with their groceries and get back to the store quicker to stock more shelves.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of is more efficient, but he's moving so much faster than the old lady that, I mean, unless she has her car unlocked already, he's going to have to wait for her. Really, if he wanted to be efficient, he should give her roller skates as well.
Yeah, but there's some insurance issues with that.
I would imagine so.
And that's when he gets an offer from the old lady
Right.
to up his game in career mode by, she said, you're a remarkable young man. Have you ever considered a career on an assembly line?
Boy, he is moving up in the world.
He gets a job at the Acme Missile Factory,
which is in danger of losing business. I hate that. Once again, millennials ruining the mom and pop missile business.
Yeah, the military-industrial complex is just collapsing.
But it is. We are supposed to feel bad for this mom and pop missile factory.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It gets crazier because there's a hostile takeover by this asshole in pantaloons called Lord Slide Rule.
And this is the most Joe Simon character of any character in either issue of this book.
Never mind that Lord Slide Rule also has two dwarf henchmen that carry his cape like someone carries the train of a bride's veil, or whatever.
Yeah, and he dresses like gosh, what's the guy from the Fourth World ones? The assassin.
Oh yeah. I know who you're talking about. I just can't think of his name.
Yeah, but like a Renaissance style.
Yeah, the pantaloons.
Yeah, but a combination of like Renaissance style and Colonel Clink, kind of.
Because he does wear a monocle.
He does wear a monocle.
He's evil.
Well, and he just checks all the evil boxes off. He wants to break into the military-industrial complex, and he is an engineer, and perhaps most damning, he and his cohorts have a lot of circus skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once again, circuses.
They're acrobats, and I'm like, why?
It doesn't make there is no reason for them to be doing flips and tumbles. It is like Ultraman. It is all for show. They just got to do 7 flips before. I mean, Ultraman at least does 7 flips for no reason before he punches a giant monster in the face.
Yeah.
These guys do 7 or 8 flips before they start filling out paperwork in triplicate.
Yeah, it's really strange.
They are bureaucrats. They are engineers and bureaucrats who want to put they just want to take over this mom and pop missile factory and make it somehow sinister.
Yeah.
Seems wrong.
And it's really weird because Lord Sly Rule immediately fires Brother Power because he wants to hire his own people. Like, there's already people doing the factory work. Why would you fire them all and then get inexperienced people doing it?
Well, and specifically, he wants to fire them all before he has the job of running the company. That's the bit of the machination here that doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, the deal is he gets to take over the company if he can solve the production issue.
Oh, so dig this. Here's the production slowdown. One guy reaches over with his right hand to pick up a piece from a shelf on his left.
So he reaches across his body with his right hand to get something, and then he has to put it down on the right side of his body.
Yeah.
So his extra motion is the slowdown.
Yeah.
And he looks so sad about it,
I know.
too.
And Brother Power later says, well, wait, you can just have left-handed people do it.
It takes him a while to get to that
point. But also, I call bullshit because
you can't hire left-handed people.
Oh, listen.
They're the worst.
That's true. But
Like circus folk.
But just because you're right-handed doesn't mean you can't use your left hand to pick something up. Just the one guy is working inefficiently. This is
dangerously, because he's the conveyor belt is right in front of him. In order to reach over, and you would think he has to do this for every part that comes through.
Yeah.
In order to reach over to his left side, he has to put his knee up on the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
He's going to get chewed up.
It also doesn't look like there's any reason why they couldn't just move that table over a couple feet.
Right. So there's that, and it's really just an ergonomics issue. It's a really simple fix, but it's like the main plot point that drives this story.
Well, that's the problem with ergonomics, though, is, I mean, these kind of problems start with the top of the organization. It's a thing called trickle-down ergonomics. I'm just sitting here grinning to myself right now.
You know, it's funny because Governor Reagan does show up in this comic.
He does?
Yeah, I'll point him out later.
Oh, man. It's voodoo ergonomics. That's what it is.
Yeah. Hey, folks, we're going to take a quick promotional break, and when we come back, we'll hear more about Brother Power the Geek. Stick around.
Trekker Talk.
A fan podcast devoted to the adventures of 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair from the pages of Trekker Comics by writer and artist Ron Randall.
I'm Darren.
And I'm Ruth.
Please join us as we discuss the stories, characters, and art in this excellent retro sci-fi adventure series.
Special episodes feature interviews with Ron Randall himself discussing Trekker and his other comics.
We hope you'll join us as we travel from the dangerous backstreets of New Guelph to the depths of outer space and everywhere in between.
Listen at Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or visit trekkertalk.com.
Trekker Talk is part of the Rad Adventures Network at radadventuresnetwork.com. Warlord Worlds.
A fan podcast devoted to the comics of writer and artist Mike Grell, including The Warlord, John Sable, Green Arrow, Starslayer, and Shaman's Tears.
I'm Ruth.
And I'm Darren.
Please join us as we discuss the stories, characters, and art in the many excellent comics from writer and artist Mike Grell.
Special episodes feature interviews with Mike Grell himself.
And special segments feature great guests discussing the Legion of Superheroes.
Listen at Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or visit warlordworlds.com.
Warlord Worlds is part of the Rad Adventures Network at radadventuresnetwork.com.
Everyone is delighted with the solution to this problem that Brother Power has offered up, except for the aforementioned Lord Slide Rule and his goons,
who Brother Power has to beat up reluctantly.
They don't want him taking credit for the solution, otherwise he's not going to get, Lord Slide Rule's not going to get the company.
Right, but look how sad Brother Power is when he punches out the guy at the panel 1 of page 15.
Yeah, he's damn near in tears.
Yeah.
When will you learn I'm not really a violent person?
As he breaks somebody's jaw.
As he beats up 5 circus engineers.
In loincloths and Roman armor.
His observance of this group is there's something very unreasonable about that group.
Yeah. So does the old factory guy realize Lord Slide Rule's a dick, and then he makes Brother Power the plant foreman? Is that what happens?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay.
And then the hippies show up and protest the missiles.
And we see once again
picket signs.
Indeed, we do. These are some spectacular picket signs that we
get. And right there at the front of the group, holding the signs, Brother Paul, Brother Nick,
and Cindy.
But they are portrayed much less sympathetically than they were in the last issue.
Yes, inconsistent, as you mentioned.
Yeah, they are shown as not just being kind of lazy Beetle Bailey type hippies, which is pretty much the way they were portrayed in the previous issue. But this time they are deluded hypocrites who, whatever else their issues were in the previous issue, they were both terrible at violence and willing to do it only by proxy, in terms of they would let Brother Power do their fighting for them, but they themselves would never resort to violence. Possibly due to sleepiness, possibly due to incompetence.
Sleepiness.
But in this issue, they start attacking the workers at the Acme missile factory with their picket signs and start beating them with their peace signs. They've brought some fantastic paper mache and giant puppets with them because it is a protest.
They have Uncle Sam in it's like a balloon or something. It's Uncle Sam carrying a sign that says "Young America wants peace."
It is a very mixed message that is sending.
So I have a question
because they're hitting people with picket signs. They have great pickle signs. Peace now, no more missiles. Crush violence, no more war missiles. Acme's missiles kill kids.
My question about the obvious change in the way that the hippies are portrayed here is knowing who the publisher of DC Comics was at the time.
Carmine Infantino.
Carmine was the EIC.
Oh,
right?
I thought he was the publisher by 68.
He might have been the publisher.
But
knowing from the top down at DC,
sure,
very conservative.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this maybe was
editorial mandate?
An editorial mandate, or was it just Joe not being consistent with his characters?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I know that despite the book selling pretty well, the management at DC weren't crazy about the book, and Mort Weisinger, editor of the Superman books, hated hippies, and he lobbied to have this book canceled, and he did get his way.
And I think we'll probably wrap up with that when we get to the end of this story. But that is it's a note to put down right now, because as we go through, you'll see some more inconsistencies and some more things that lead you to believe maybe there was a little editorial meddling, which coincided with the demise of the book.
Yeah.
Although this is from before hippies in general were being as vilified. I feel like there wasn't the same, this is pre-Manson, certainly.
Yeah.
And at that point you get definitely not just the hatred of hippies, but the fear of hippies.
Yeah.
Yeah, both issues predate Woodstock by 1 year.
Yeah. And Julie Schwartz, although not a hippie, as one of the main editors at DC, if this was one of his books, it might have gotten to last a little longer, because he was more of a liberal than I think a lot of the other guys, but still being an older guy from a different generation, I think. Yeah.
And a horrible sexual abuser, apparently.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he's dead now. We can't punish him for it.
Yeah, it was a different time when everyone was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it was the Don Draper days. Most men in those positions abuse their power. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying it's not just Julie.
I understand that. And it was certainly more common, and it is unfortunately still pretty common.
Yeah.
But we do get images of the hippies beating up the factory workers. And one of the more telling images of that is a picket sign that says peace that has been busted over a worker's head, and his head has gone through it like a cartoon picture.
So these are the mostly passive, getting our asses handed to us hippies from the previous issue, and now they're the first ones to strike a blow.
Yeah, they are sick of getting run over with motorcycles. They're not having it anymore. I think the final straw for them before they revert to violence, though, and I do kind of love this statement, is, Brother Nick, they're burning our paper mache missiles.
Yeah, because for the demonstration, they made a paper mache missile.
They can't do that. Clobber them with your peace signs, men.
Yeah. So, but Brother Power sees what's going on. He says, stop. You don't understand. And they're like, hey, it's Brother Power. Cool it. And he says, Brother Power explains to them, these missiles are for outer space, not for war.
Which is not something we have gotten any indication of previously in this issue.
No.
And it is another, this issue, as much as I love it, and the last one, feel as though they are written without an outline.
Yeah. It's totally just and then this, and just kind of by the seat of his pants.
Yeah, it's Axe Cop style.
Yeah.
Ooh, and then if there's something that needs correcting from what he had done previously, then he'll throw in that note no, these are space missiles. And then the hippies are totally cool with that, and they decide to follow Brother Power's lead. And they all get jobs at the missile factory.
Isn't that fun?
Just the good hippies they are.
Yep. I love there's a newspaper article that says, are hippies slowing down the space program as protest?
It could be. I mean, they're probably not very good at it.
Oh, man.
I mean, as has been established, they are a very sleepy group of individuals.
Yeah.
That is not what you want necessarily on your factory line. I mean, I'm seeing all kinds of like Lucia Ball style shenanigans happening on this.
That's true.
Well, what's happening with this is that prior to hiring the hippies, after he'd beaten up Lord Slide Rule and his men, he offered them jobs.
Yeah.
So they're working at the plant, and they decide clandestinely to slip this note to the reporter to tell him that the hippies are the ones slowing it down. And again, no one believes
Lord
the...
Sly Rule and his cronies, now in coveralls, not their fancy circus outfits, although they're still wearing funny hats.
Awesome hats.
Well,
First of all,
everybody's
they
wearing
didn't
funny
get
hats.
fired. Why didn't they fire Lord Slide Rule?
I think they may have just assumed that they were other hippies. We got Brother Paul's wearing a funny hat. We got another Elton John looking hippie wearing a cowboy hat.
Oh, yeah.
We have somebody wearing like a Jimmy Superfly Snuka flower wreath on his head.
One guy looks like Count Dante.
Yeah, so he totally does. But I think they may have just assumed that Lord Slide Rule and his boys, they've got funny hats. They're probably some of the hippies. Give them jobs.
Okay.
Well, the idea of sliding this note to the reporter and getting this article written in the paper is to undermine the hippies and Brother Power and get them fired so he can take it back over again. So after the article is published, they decide, well, the space agency might believe this, so we have to go ahead and test launch one of these missiles. And again, he calls it an unarmed missile. You've already established that this is a missile going to space and it's not for war.
Yeah.
Why do you just refer to it as a missile? Why do you have to say, oh, this is an unarmed missile? We're shooting armed missiles into space.
Also, Lord Slide Rule must have a very, very complicated contract with the Acme Missile Company, where he gets to take over the company if A, he can solve their production holdup company, or 2, if the company fails and is talked shit about by a newspaper?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Article 2.
Man, he's got a good lawyer.
So they decide this missile test has to go off without a hitch. Otherwise, everybody's going to believe the hippies are sabotaging this missile company.
And it does not go off without a hitch. Thanks to Lord Slide Rule's sabotage, we get a page that made me realize how much of the previous issue was like 9-panel grids.
Yeah.
Because it seems so sparse, but it's just a 4-panel page. Big top, big bottom, and then 2 little panels in the middle. But it seems so sparse that it almost looks like a splash page of the missile being counted off while the hippies watch with anticipation. It lifts into the air with a buzz. And then it explodes in the air with a giant boom as we see one of Lord Slide Rule's goons in the foreground laughing his ass off.
Yeah, and he looks crazy.
Yeah.
Oh boy, we turn the page and we see Brother Power investigating the scene looking for evidence of sabotage, and he found it because the cylinder that should have contained the takeoff timer was empty.
And oh shit, you are totally right. That is Ronald Reagan as the governor.
Yeah. I didn't notice it until I read the Wikipedia article. But, Reagan.
So the book based out in San Francisco in the late 60s.
He would have been
Governor
governor
Ronald
at
Reagan.
the time.
Yeah.
And he also would have been calling in the National Guard on hippies at the time.
Yeah. He was conservative as heck. What a douchebag.
They all decided this sabotage plan worked. They all decided it was the hippies that sabotaged the missile program, so go get them.
Yep, so the Gipper calls in the National Guard, and they start attacking the hippies with their tanks and their police cars. And Cindy has a heart-to-heart with Brother Geek. With Brother Power. And she says, "It's just like last time, pal. They'll never believe. A geek."
He says, "I'm just a third-class citizen. Well, I won't let them take me." He's like, "You'll never take me alive."
Yeah, never mind the fact that they are going to kill all of the hippies, apparently.
Right. And Cindy's like, no, it's hopeless. Nothing can get you out of this. And then we get help from the Baron, who quit being an airplane guy and now he's joined the hippie movement.
Yeah, and has had a change of heart. He's legitimately turned into being a good guy and has decided to use his interest in World War I aeronautics for good instead of evil.
So he calls in a buddy and they swing down with the glider. And apparently a wood glider is all it takes to stop the National Guard.
Which, by the transitive property, does mean that the National Guard is less of a threat than a group of orphans who live under a pier.
That's correct.
Yeah, because that plane did not take out the clinkers, but it is more than a match for the National Guard.
So Brother Power jumps off the roof and falls on his ass. I'm not
Quite literally, yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes into the missile to escape, I guess. And then Lord Slide Rule, like a dick, launches the missile with one of his henchmen on the little dwarf on his back, which is creepy.
Yeah. You should be carrying that dude in front of him in some kind of a reverse Baby Bjorn, like a real Master Blaster situation.
Thank you. I was hoping you were going to go there with Master Blaster. But yeah. And then all the hippies are like, oh no. You launched our pal Brother Power into outer space. Reagan loves it because he's a piece of crap, and Lord Slide Rule does go to jail. So yay, because the hippies burst into the control room and beat him up.
And once the hippies beat him up, then Reagan comes around to their way of thinking and delivers to Lord Slide Rule the worst insult he can think of.
Ooh, let me do this, please.
Absolutely.
So. This is the fiend responsible for the sabotage? You're a bad actor, Lord Slide Rule.
Yeah, see?
So are you, Ronald Reagan.
I didn't mean to Edward G. Robinson it. I was trying to do a Reagan like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Can I try Reagan on it?
Please.
So this is the fiend responsible for the... Oh, gosh.
That sounds like
terrible.
Peter Lorre.
Yeah, a little bit.
None of us can do a good Reagan.
God, I feel like I used to be able to.
Me too.
Kurt, you want to give a Reagan a try? Okay.
Absolutely not. I listened to the two of you and I'm like, oh, no.
It's apparently harder than it looks.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the easy crutch to have is if you punctuate every fourth word with mommy, that would be a good one. So this is the fiend responsible for the sabotage, mommy.
That's actually much better. I like that quite a bit.
You're a bad actor, Lord Slide Rule. There you go again.
So we end the first issue of Brother Power with him driving in his motorcycle off a bridge into the San Francisco Bay, never knowing if we'll see him again. We end the second issue of Brother Power with him shot into space, never knowing if we'll see him again.
Indeed.
And we don't until 1989 in Swamp Thing Annual number 5, written by Neil Gaiman.
Ah.
Is that the one where it's a complete reboot? It changes the origin story a bit, and Cindy is a former prostitute.
That sounds about
correct,
right.
Because in the Mike Allred one shot, she was something different.
Yeah,
but I think in the Neil Gaiman one, she was a former prostitute.
And then there was, I think the connecting tissue, though, would be that there was also the Neil Gaiman issue of Sandman that was illustrated by Mike Allred that featured Prez. So you get that little bridge.
So we may never get to talk to Neil Gaiman. But the next time that I talk to Mike Allred, I'm going to ask him about Brother Power, and I'll bring some notes to the show.
Man,
awesome.
Maybe we could... What if through the power of podcasting we could get...
And positive thinking.
That we could get a new Brother Power series. Yes, it was by Dr. Stephen R. Covey. Oh, no, that's not the power of positive thinking. That's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh.
My bad.
What if we got them to do Brother Power, Prez?
Ooh.
Brother Power, the Prez.
Yeah.
What if Brother Power has like a Bruce Banner, Hulk kind of thing with Prez and Pow?
And then he's also Nicolas Cage.
Right. He's a national treasure.
And he sticks around long enough.
That was much better,
really good,
Reagan.
by the way. Yeah.
They counted on America to be soft. They counted wrong. You know?
Yeah, so he goes from Brother Power to evolves into Prez. And then Prez sticks around long enough to see the end of the earth, gets amnesia, and wakes up as Commandy. Hair grown out a little bit.
Even
clothes
though,
been torn
wait,
up.
but Commandy was Tommy Tomorrow.
Oh, you're killing me. That's true.
Commandy grows up to be Tommy Tomorrow. So it can go from Brother Power to Prez to Commandy to
Space
Tommy.
Cabbie.
See, there's the successful movie franchise for DC.
Yeah.
Just do 4
Finally, that's
movies.
the one they've been waiting for.
Yeah.
It's this Prez is a moneymaker.
Don't anybody tell Ben Affleck.
He could be Boss Smiley. He would be a believable Boss Smiley. I think he could do a good job with that.
Oh yeah, Boss Smiley.
You know what's great is that at the end of issue 1 of Brother Power, the last little narrative box says, "Will we see him again? You never know, but stick around for the next issue and find out." And then the last narrative box in this issue says, "Will we see the Geek again? We will. We will. Why should we kill off a good thing?"
Oh, boy.
Right. No, issue 3.
Man.
It's done.
Yeah.
Real switcheroo there.
Yeah. In the 70s, DC launched a lot of series that lasted only a handful of issues, but were really cool. And it's like, dang it, I wish there were Stalker or Claw the Unconquered had really lasted longer. Or what was the, that Jungle Queen that they had?
I don't know. It wasn't Sheena. It wasn't Bomba the Jungle Boy.
Yeah.
Was it from the Bomba the Jungle Boy line?
No, this was its own.
Rima.
Rima the Jungle Girl. That's it. She showed up on Super Friends, I think, actually.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. But
yeah, even in this very issue, we get previews for upcoming issues of Detective Chimp and Angel and the Ape. And it uses the phrase halos and bananas.
Oh, man.
Which I love.
Right.
How long did that book last? That was only like 3 issues.
Angel
right?
and the Ape didn't
3,
last
4
that
issues?
long either.
Was that one that showed up in like Showcase occasionally,
it may-
like around when the Maniacs was coming out?
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think Angel and the Ape did show up in Showcase first.
I know they had like a 90s reboot.
They did. There was an 80s one too, I think. Yeah, like them, just like the Creeper and Hawk and Dove, they had runs in Showcase and then went to series, albeit briefly.
Yeah, and the Inferior 5 too.
Inferior 5 was actually earlier.
First issue special.
Earlier-
No, issue. I'm sorry. If Inferior 5 was just prior to that. I'm thinking about
Inferior 5 is like mid 60s.
You're thinking about Lady Cop.
No, I'm thinking about that. What was the Kirby?
Now you're thinking
what
about
was
Lady
the
Cop.
Kirby?
You're thinking about the Dingbats of
the
Danger
Dingbats.
Street.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
Kirby completed several issues of that, and the rest of them have never seen the light of day.
And Simon did the Green Team for first issue.
That's
special.
true. Oh my gosh, the first issue special has got some wonderful stuff.
Most importantly, Lady Cop.
The greatest comic book of all time.
It's up there, man.
Warlord started there.
Yeah.
That's right. I gotta say, like, I've done Lady Cop twice on this show before in like the 300 issues episode span, and I will probably do it again during this soft reboot that we've done with Legacy numbering.
I thought you were going to tell me you'd done it because you were
No,
sleepy.
no, because it's just fun. I did it with each of my other co-hosts previously. Jeff, who famously hated lots of stuff, and I expected him to hate it, loved Lady Cop. And Spencer, who I figured would probably get a kick out of it, hated it.
Yeah, who could hate Lady Cop?
Spencer, he has. I'll bag on him off air, but no. I just he just didn't like it. You know, I dragged him kicking and screaming into doing like Silver and Bronze Age stuff, which was a mistake on my part.
There are 2 comic books that if I find a copy of, I buy them. One is Lady Cop's issue of First Issue Special. The other one is Skate Man. And I keep them, I hoard them, and then I end up giving them away like evangelically. I'm like a Jehovah's Witness, like just handing out, have you heard the good news? Lady Cop. Have you heard the good news? Skate Man.
Here's the thing. Both of them are super fun and super crazy.
And usually pretty cheap, although I think I might be personally driving the price of them up.
Well, I know my good friend Rob Kelly also proselytizes about Lady Cop. It's a great Rob Kelly from the Fire and Water Network. Love Rob, and Yeah, he loves Lady Cop. The word is out on Lady Cop. Like, people are coming to it. It was this oddball book, and now, yeah, it's hard to get one for under $10 now. Because
And you want to hear something odd?
What?
I lived in we're in Portland right now.
Yeah.
If you live in Portland, you know not to go to Salem, where I currently live. If you're vacationing in Oregon and you make your way to Salem on your way to the ocean, don't bother. The comic book stores down there are either non-existent or suck.
Yeah.
But there is one spot near me with just a huge collection of long boxes of back issues, nothing prior to 1988, except one book.
Lady Cop?
There's an issue of Lady Cop.
Get it.
Yeah.
I had begged the guy. I said, hey, show me every silver or bronze age book you got. Point me to them, because I'm only finding 90s stuff here. And he goes, I got one. And it was Lady Cop.
Lady Cop is great.
I own it.
Nice.
I love it. Well, I think that's probably going to about do it for this episode. I want to thank our guest, Hub, for coming on.
And I want to, you're welcome you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good time, Hub. Thanks. I really appreciate you. Your input was fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I had a really good time.
Folks, I'm going to plug a show again. If you're not listening to Tighten Up the Defense, there's something wrong with your life. Fix it. Listen to that show. It's hilarious.
Oh, thank you. And I would like to point out it is Titan spelled Titan.
Very good.
Just so that you can find it properly. It is also something that apparently there is, I end up getting a lot of people that think it is going to be affiliated with the football team, the Tennessee Titans, and it is not, but I bear them no specific ill will. And I like to think that there are some people who have accidentally found it that are like, well, this isn't about my favorite Tennessee football team, but I'll give it a go. And if you're one of those listeners, thanks for sticking around.
Just for the curious who don't know, the show is about both Teen Titans and Defenders. Probably my two favorite teams, super teams, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, you like the Titans more than the Legion?
I love the Legion, let me tell you, but when they brought Titans, I remember buying the Titans all through the 70s, but when they brought the Titans back in the 80s...
Oh, I know, it's a big deal.
I couldn't stop. It was my first ever signing at any comic book store ever, was both Marv and George. And they signed everything I gave them.
Oh,
And they were wonderful. And I just couldn't get enough of the Titans at the time. And then I go back to my Gerber Defenders. That's my retreat for fun book.
yeah, that's where we are at in the series right now.
Can't
we
wait.
are in
Can't
the
wait for the
sweet
next
spot of the Gerber, and we've just hit in the Bozo run. It's been a lot of fun. But the great thing about the Defenders is it's every time they get a new writer, I am disappointed that the writing team has changed initially, and then I am delighted.
Well, you'll have a great time after the Gerber run, because there'll be 3 or 4 issues where it's just slow and dragging it, and then all of a sudden it kicks into a different gear.
Oh, yeah. The David Kraft stuff is super fun. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the Roger Stern stuff. I'm looking forward to the J.M. DeMatteis stuff. It's and so far we've had Steve Englehart and Roy Thomas and Len Wein, and
It's quite a pedigree for that book.
No kidding.
For a book that's just kind of gotten shoved under the bed by Marvel.
Yeah.
But it's weird though, because every writer who has been on that book is somebody that like totally rules, and I love all their stuff.
Yeah.
So
Well, unless we're attacked by an elf with a gun, we'll probably be here next week with another episode.
that's right. You can find Comic Reflections on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, and Podbean. Follow us on Twitter at Comic Reflection. Follow me on Instagram at PromCakes. Until next time, we'll see you in the funny pages.
After a long day of criminal activity, there's nothing I like better than to sit down and listen to the old radio. Wait a minute, that's not a radio, it's...
Plastic Man! Plastic Man! Plastic Man!
That's right, it's the Plasticast, a brand new podcast dedicated to Plastic Man. I'm your host, Max Romero. Together, we'll be talking about Plastic Man in the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and every other age you can think of, right up to his upcoming reappearance in DC Rebirth. We'll also be talking about any Plastic Man news that might be coming up, and his appearances in every media from comics to cartoons. Whew. Makes me woozy just to think about it. I hope you'll join me to talk about the longest arm of the law here on the Plasticast, here on the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
Plastic Man! Plastic Man!
Hey, Kids Comics!
Hey, Michael.
Yeah?
We need to do a new promo.
A new one?
A new one.
Why?
Because we've moved.
Moved?
We've moved to a new place. We still read comics.
We do. We still talk about comics.
Because you can't do a comic book podcast unless you read and talk about comics, because that's kind of stupid. But now, we have a new episode still available every Thursday, but at twotruefreaks.libsyn.com.
Hey, Kids Comics!
So remember, Hey Kids Comics has moved to twotruefreaks.libsyn.com.